It is my joy to be part of this service with you each week, and I always, do I want to affirm that? Let me just see. I always get the chance to practice what I preach. Is that a good thing? I don't know. And this week, I feel like the last couple of weeks, I've got to learn the hard way. If you were here last week, I talked a little bit about how I was the focus of a scam where $1,000 left my care. And, you know, when something like that happens, and the whole scenario started in the grocery store where I got a phone call, which I believed to be from my bank, and then it just went downhill from there. So it's interesting how when you're threatened, you know, they were trying to be helpful, threatened, and you've got a basket full of groceries and you know you got to check out first to deal with this, that you don't do too well. I didn't do too well, let's put it that way, in the moment. When you feel threatened, when you feel like there's some fear involved, maybe some anger, some confusion, and at some point, that dark cloud we've been talking about kind of comes and parks itself over you. I'm probably sure it was raining on me as I was walking through the rest of the grocery store. And if you can't think clearly, because it's hard to think clearly when you're facing something like that, then the subconscious just takes over and you just start responding according to habit, according to past experience, you know, what's familiar. What you're trying to do is take control, right? Get it back. Make yourself as safe as possible, as quick as possible. And as Marianne Williamson said, you know, your best thinking got you here. So how's that working for you? And I wasn't feeling very good, so I knew it wasn't working well for me. And I'm glad to be talking this week about two of our spiritual qualities that can help us move through something like that, from darkness into light. And those spiritual qualities today we're going to begin with the power of wisdom that is inherent in our being. It's inherent in our being. Remember last week, we had the little cartoon of Supergirl. And Supergirl was singing to us of all of our wonderful qualities. And one of the things she sang was, I know right from wrong. Do you remember that? What I want you to listen to is the fact that she didn't say, I learned right from wrong. She said, I know right from wrong. It's inherent. It's born into us. And not because we're in a physical body, but because we're spiritual beings. We have an inner knowing of what's right. That spiritual quality we refer to as wisdom. When Charles Fillmore he's our co-founder of Unity, he identified 12 of these spiritual qualities or powers. And when he got to wisdom, he actually used the word judgment or discernment. And this day and age, we use the word judgment harshly most of the time, right? So that's why we've kind of shifted over to wisdom. But keep in mind that it's not meant to be a very dry sense of wisdom. It's really spiritual when compassion is involved. You know that that's the type of spiritual wisdom that Spirit is trying to make known in you when it's got a flavor of compassion to it. And here's some of the ways that Charles would describe wisdom. When the quickening of our judgment faculty, our wisdom power, occurs, we find ourselves discriminating between the good and the evil. We judge righteous judgment, we know with an inner intuition, and judge from a new viewpoint. The origin of wisdom is in God. All its conclusions are based on truth, free from prejudice or personal ignorance. So, how many of you have heard that there's a difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law? Who wants to take a chance at explaining what that means? What's the difference between letter of the law and spirit of the law? Anybody? Okay, Danny, shout it out. The letter of the law is how it's written. So kind of like a fundamentalist interpretation, yes. And then the spirit of the law, the intention behind it. How succinct and very accurate, wouldn't you say? Yay. Well done. So Jesus was all about the spirit of the law. And it's kind of interesting considering that we treat him as our way shower, the one who is fully in touch with the divine Christ within him. And yet he was constantly contradicting the law of their time. So just a few of those examples up here on the screen. He would say that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And I could go into a lot of detail about how they would punish you if you worked or even blinked your eyes on the Sabbath, so to speak. Sorry. All right, secondly, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye. You know, when someone tears your eye out, you do it to them. But I tell you, don't react violently against one who is evil. He said, agree with your adversary quickly, even before you get to court. He said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. That's one of my favorites. And I don't know how many of us actually stop to think, what is right judgment? If it doesn't have anything to do with appearance, then it must be something invisible. Right judgment is invisible. So what I know is it's not something, wisdom in this case is not something that we just learn from books, and it's not something that we discern with our physical senses. Wisdom is not about your head learning, your thoughts, your logic. It's about, here's what the ego thinks it is. Get power and control as quickly as possible. That's wise, right? Do whatever you can to stop the fear. That's wise. And wisdom is not, or the right judgment of what wisdom is not because it's a law. But instead, I'd like to think that, as I mentioned before, there is some form of compassion involved. You know, when you think about who the best judges in the court are, Judd. Judd, have you been in a courtroom before? Yes, you have. Would you say that you can tell the difference between one type of judge and another, like one having more wisdom, others kind of just going by the book? Okay, so what I would like to think is going on for those judges with right judgment is that they're checking in with their inner knowing, a deeper knowing than what was written in the books long ago, that maybe they're even asking either more questions of people involved in the system, or they're going into their own heart and asking themselves questions so that they're getting to their heart. They're seeking their intuition. Now, you and I are not judges in a court for the most part, but you and I do make regular decisions every single day, most of it unconsciously. Can you relate to that? Making decisions every single day. So if right judgment is not visible based on visible things, then what can we call right judgment when it comes to using our highest wisdom? Some of the things that come to mind for me is my decision promoting what's worthwhile or helpful? Why don't you close your eyes while I say these, and just ask yourself these kinds of questions. Is my decision healthy or healing? Is my decision positive or peacemaking? Is my decision self-forgiving? Will it promote love or joy? Is my decision for the highest good? For everyone involved? You can open your eyes. This is just a few examples of the kind of questions we ask our inner knowing. And the questions themselves will start to draw us closer to our wisdom. Right judgment is always, in my opinion, of God. And therefore, it's going to be of good. That's a clue for us when we're trying to get to wisdom. And some of us aren't even familiar with what wisdom looks like or feels like or how it comes upon us or how we're able to bring it out of us. So think of the times when, everybody has probably heard the phrase, it's the still small voice within you. For me, a still small voice, very, very different than when I hear my mother's voice. You shouldn't have done that. I told you you shouldn't have done that. But the still small voice is, be still. Just rest. Turn to love. It's not a pushy voice. It's not very loud. That's why we have to pay attention. Sometimes wisdom shows up as a hunch or what we call an intuition. And really, if I had to choose just one word of how to define spiritual wisdom, it would be intuition, which is something that we can't force, right? It just shows up at the right time in the right place. Einstein, who was a science guy, right? Not always such a science guy, said, there's things which we come to know so well that we do not know how we know them. I believe in intuition and inspiration, he said. At times I feel certain I'm right while not knowing the reason. Have you had that experience? Yeah. Yeah. We also can experience wisdom through dreams. Some of us say, I don't have any dreams. Others just dream prolifically. And that was the case for Charles Fillmore. He actually was ready to move Myrtle back to Colorado or somewhere further west. They were in the Kansas City area. And he started having dreams to stay put in the Kansas City area. So I'm on a big hill looking out over a large plot of land, and the words, you have a great work to do here. And he had that dream more than once, and it turns out that's where Unity Village was meant to be founded and where the movement of unity was going to begin. So notice if you're the one who has dreams. Write them down when you wake up in the morning and just ponder over them for a little while and see if that wisdom doesn't become more clear as to their meaning. Sometimes we're actually physically compelled to move in a certain direction. And one of the stories I remember from Sonia Choquette is she was driving to pick up her kids from school, and she literally felt compelled to turn here when it was not the route to school. And when she turned here, within seconds, a little toddler in a diaper ran across the street all by itself. She pulled over, she grabbed the child, and then she felt compelled to just drive the neighborhood and look for an open doorway. And sure enough, there was a house with an open door, and as she went to the doorway with the child, the woman answering the door was like, "Why do you have my baby?" And she said, "Exactly. Why do I have your baby?" So that was where her body just could not be stopped. It was forced to turn. It was forced to look. Then there's the actual little bit of work in establishing wisdom this way is about just knowing the truth. We study to know the truth. We study here at Unity to understand spiritual principles, to see how the universe works. And when we study deeply enough, we come to a realization of those truths. That's a very special word in Unity. It's not just, now I know it. It's like, I know that I know. I don't have to have faith. It just is in me. And so some of the things we sing regularly here is, God is my source, God is my power. Yeah, that's one of those songs that should stick in your ear and should follow you wherever you go, so that in those moments when you feel money draining out of your account against your will, God is my source. God is my source. Once you come to know these spiritual truths about yourself, then your response can be, so if God is my source, I can be generous. I can be forgiving. I can be open-minded. Once you know X, then you know what Y must be. Do you understand? So when we know these truths, we know what to do, the next choice to make, the right decision. And I would say my favorite way of knowing, feeling my wisdom come through, is in my emotional feelings. This was the thing I learned most deeply from Esther Hicks, is when you're looking at a decision, left or right, which one feels better? Because what's happening in your emotional state is it's an alert of what you really believe, and it's also an alert of what your spirit is trying to tell you. Sometimes they conflict. Sometimes you don't believe it, so you feel negatively about it, while it is the truth. So we have to get to, is there any error here that's in the way, that's bringing up these negative feelings? Or is this really spirit trying to point me in the right direction, to take a step back? There's lots of ways that you may experience wisdom in your being. How do we help that wisdom come out, come to light, to take us out of the darkness again? And we've gone through this process before. We refer to the Heart Math Institute and their process, where it's about using those feelings on purpose, that we take some time when we have a decision to make. And the first thing we do is we set the decision aside and we just come to our heart and we think about someone we love or someone we appreciate. Might even be your puppy or a beautiful place in nature that just makes your heart sing. And in your mind, you go there till you can feel it in your heart. When you feel the warmth of that or gratitude, just trust that you are now living from an energy of the divine. That's where spirit lives, in the presence and as the presence of love all the time. So when we get to love, now we're aligned with the divine mind. Now we're able to ask the questions and hear the answers because we're speaking the same language. We're dialed into the right frequency. Get to wisdom through love. And anything that we've just talked about as far as how wisdom shows up or how we can encourage wisdom to show up is going to require something really important from you. That is to train yourself in the moment where decisions must be made to pause. If you do nothing else but use the word pause, stop, rest, wait, pay attention. And then, once you're fully centered and aware of the moment that you're in, you see that the house is not really on fire. You see that you're not really about to be hit by a train. You're just standing here with a roof over your head, so pause. And to get to the deeper wisdom, ask, what is mine to do? What is the highest choice? And then listen for a response from your being. Is it coming from your body? Is it coming from your feelings? Is it coming from your thoughts? Who cares at this point, as long as it feels aligned with spirit? But oftentimes when we go through this process and we remember to pause, because we're not going to get there if we don't at least stop for a minute and just check in. Then we might feel an answer and go, but was that God or was that just me making it up? Anyone have that question? I'm going to just offer that when you're struggling with that question, was that really the divine mind or was that me making it up? First of all, who are you? Divine mind. As spirit, as eternal, as infinite being, as an extension of the divine, the one presence, you have the mind of God within you. So you have a really good chance that it was the divine mind, although we say subconscious drives 95% of our day. That's why we pause first, or else subconscious will just take over. So get still, pay attention, be still and know. Once you've got yourself centered in the divine, then you can ask yourself, what is mine to do? And if the response is coming from a motive of what's the safest way to get me through this without being scathed or, without anybody taking advantage of me. Now we're looking to the ego's information. It's feeding you that information because it's based in fear. Can you feel that? Yeah. So if your motive for doing whatever you just heard was from fear, then we're not quite there yet. We've got some more listening to do and probably some clearing up. But when the motive is coming from your wisdom, back to your wisdom of God is the source of all my good, the universe is for me, there's only one power working in my life and it's good, based in that, you feel a sense of relaxation with the answer, even if it's just that truth that comes up for you. That could be the answer that you're seeking. There's only one presence here, and God is in the midst of this. And suddenly you feel relaxed. Who do you think that is? Your higher self, the voice of God, the mind of God. And it also brings a sense of clarity. Like, what is the next step that I should take here? So this is about getting to that which is soothing and uplifting, and whatever it is that we need to do to get our energy there first will help us get to the right answer. Of course, one of the most common practices we encourage is meditation, which is just regularly taking time in the quiet, even if you just start with 5 minutes a day, stilling your mind, being still, listening for the divine, just being aware of the divine. God is here. I am one with God. Choose a centering, simple thought. And as you start pausing and listening, asking questions, being open and receptive, and you feel like you're starting to hear information, start to track that information to see if it does lead you to your highest good. Or maybe it turned out to be the voice of your ego. So more and more and more, you can start to tell the difference between your human answer and your spirit answer. This is something that becomes a practice that we become aware of. Okay? Now, the other power, the other quality I want to talk about today that goes so beautifully with wisdom is the power of understanding, which is just a teeny bit different. Understanding. Let's say this affirmation up here together. This is kind of how I see understanding. Together, I make sense of life from my highest spiritual perspective. So, Winifred Hausman wrote a book on the 12 powers, and she said, wisdom knows with a great white light of pure knowing. Understanding knows why. It puts everything together and comes up with the answers that stand under and support. Understanding must be closely allied with the Christ, or it will be led astray by wrong reasoning and false conditions like we just talked about with the ego. So in my opinion, understanding is really one of the primary reasons we came as spiritual beings into this physical experience, is to understand better really our own nature. We cannot really understand what love is in the spiritual dimension if we haven't taken time to learn what love is not. And holy cow, does earth not give us that opportunity to learn what love is not. Anyone have that experience about what love is not? So now our spirit is more open to deeply understand what love is, because we just learned, wow, it's not that for sure. How much more pure and perfect love is. And the same with, abundance or divine substance. When we find ourselves in lack in the human position, suddenly as spirit, we know what abundance really is, because we've experienced the opposite of that. So this is an understanding journey that we're on. And that means we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves every opportunity to understand those things. Now, like I say, sometimes we can learn the hard way in order to understand, but whichever way you get there, at least your soul is growing. And just think of a moment when you felt hurt by someone else. That was an opportunity for you to learn, even though your ego wants to dominate in a case like that, that this is an opportunity not only for you to know God is in the presence of this, but love is in the presence of me, and I am safe and secure when I love. That's how we connect the dots. We start putting things together. So just imagine that you go into work and you have learned over time through repetition that your boss continually keeps showing up on Mondays in a ferocious mood, so much so that you don't want to be anywhere near him and maybe even a little afraid of him. And you've made a decision about him. You've decided that he's a grump or a grouch or whatever word you want to give him. Usually coming from ego, right? But what if you knew that over the weekend it was the only time that he had custody with his kids, and that every Sunday night he had to say goodbye to them for a week? And then when he got to work on Monday, he was upset about that. He was missing them. He was angry of the situation that he was in. Now you have a deeper understanding, right, as to the behavior, not necessarily that it's right or wrong, but compassion comes in with the package, and you can feel more understanding for him, and it makes the relationship easier. And a lot of times when your response to someone struggling in that way is understanding, it actually softens them. It gives them an energetic space to calm down and find that there might be hope for them after all. Now, everybody in this room has probably, unless you were in a really unusual family, came to this moment in time with some baggage from your family or from your growing up years, some dysfunction or some drama that we're still carrying around in our lives. And for years and years, especially before you came into Unity, you might just be assuming that it's all their fault, or more likely, it's my fault. We have absorbed the idea that either our parents, siblings, peers, teachers, culture gave us, you're not as good as. You don't measure up. And that experience of making those deductions, that understanding, is flawed because it's based on a flawed premise. And I want to show it to you in a graphic because I've shown this to some of you in the past, I know. See it again, all right? Up here on the screen is what I call an awareness ribbon. You seen these before? They usually represent something that's gone wrong. There's a problem, and they want our awareness, our focus on it. Do you see that? Okay. As opposed to, what if we tied the ends of that ribbon together and turned it sideways? It would look like an infinity symbol. Do you see that? For me, the difference is just the awareness of the problem symbol is not something that's going to solve the problem or give us any deeper understanding. It's just, wow, this is heavy, man. We're under a dark cloud with this. But if we can close up that loop and get to an infinity symbol, we're reminded, metaphorically, of the infinite good of God always available. Do you see that? So when we're tempted to blame everything on, our family for who we are today, or we're blaming ourselves because we feel like we never measured up, the ego is busy working with your experiences and what everybody told you and how your culture treated you. At the same time, you've got a spiritual understanding within you that's willing to work with your wisdom and tell you a whole different story and allow you to be a whole different person. Your wisdom will tell you, just think about this, these are some qualities that your divine wisdom already knows, and that hopefully you will pause and listen and ask and learn these things about you. I am whole and worthy. That's what your higher self is telling you. I am whole and worthy. There's only one presence in my life and one power, and it's working for me, and it's of good and of love. As a matter of fact, I am one with that presence. God and I are one. God and I are whole. This is all divine ideas of wisdom. And take this one in. So are all those people who blamed me and shamed me and criticized me. They too are one with God. They too are whole as spiritual beings. That might be a pill too hard to swallow, but it's the truth. And our other co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore, would say, I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. That's wisdom. She remembered, I'm a spiritual being, I'm infinite and eternal. Nothing not of God can harm me. I do not have to be like my parents' bodies were. I do not have to inherit their physical ailments. So all those truths are available in us. It helps if we study them in advance, but every once in a while, Spirit will get through if your energy is high enough and remind you that you are whole. And then let's tie it with understanding. So that helps us remember, okay, you know what? I just realized that my parents did the best they knew how at the time. They were suffering from their parents and their parents and their parents and all the world around them that told them that they were no good. They were doing all that they knew when they were coming from their ego, which most of us do. So I can understand why they behave that way, and yet I can also understand from the wisdom that I know that they don't have power to define my being. They don't have the ability to determine my value or decide whether I'm worthy or not. Because one, I already know I'm worthy, and two, there's only one presence, and it's love, and so there's nobody out there spouting anything that really has any power to say or to determine that I am good or not good enough. So that means I don't have to take it personally. It does not have to become my story. And is there anything in this story that I've accepted for myself that I can undo? Is there any responsibility here that I can take to transform this into light? Because we do have that ability, and heaven knows we do contribute. Socrates, a wise one that we might say, said that the unexamined life is not worth living. Can you see why, if we don't examine this about ourselves, if we don't try and get deeper into the error beliefs behind our behavior, that we're never going to understand who we truly are and what the difference is? Time wasted on earth. If we don't make time to develop our spiritual understanding, it is time wasted on earth. Now, let me give you a little bit of hope here. Every time you worry, that's actually a desire to understand. Can you see that? That's something that Linda Martella-Whitsett said in her book, Divine Audacity. Worry is a form of desire for understanding. So, desire is critical to want to understand why this is happening. How did I get here? And basically, how can I undo or move out of this cloud into the darkness? What is going on in my life right now that's calling me? You know, what kind of pattern am I seeing in my life that's not feeding me, not serving me, that wants my attention? And let me go a little bit deeper into it and say, what's the belief, the mistaken belief that I'm owning here that needs to be let go? Notice when you have repeated feelings of, I'm a victim, I can't help it, they're all doing this to me, I have no power over this, or that's unfair, nobody should be treating me that way. If you hear yourself coming from either one of those states of mind, victim or unfair, that is a clue to desire understanding. How did I get there? Because that is not based in spiritual truth. And if I've sat in this chair long enough, I should at least have an idea that I have a way out here. Let me figure out what this is. Sometimes it's a consistent feeling of jealousy or judgment about someone else, as if they have good things that you can't have. Is that based in wisdom? No. So ask yourself that question. What am I jealous of that makes me think that I can't have? God's good for me. And just keep asking those questions. They don't deserve that, or I don't deserve that. Those are ideas based in error. They should be a red flag, and ask ourselves, what's the truth about that? Why is this coming up for me? And this is when Jesus said, ask your questions and it will be given. Seek, search and you'll find, knock and the door will be open to you. So I'm going to ask you to think about applying truth or wisdom and trying to connect the dots to understanding. So up here on the screen, if life is for me, then finish the sentence. If life is for me, just see if there's something going on in your consciousness that says life is not for me, and therefore I'm misbehaving in some way. You know, if we feel like something's been taken from us, start the statement. But if life is for me, then what's the understanding behind that? Then no one can take my good from me. Might be a momentary glass of milk that someone took from me, but I know who my source is and I know where to go to replace that. You know, when we start to feel like there's only so much available, that there's the haves and the have-nots and it will always be that way, then we ask the wisdom question, if there's always plenty of good to go around because God is infinite and God is the source of good and God is the divine substance that we form it from, if that's the case, then not only is there plenty for everyone, but I can afford to be a giving channel of that because it just keeps coming, right? Connect your dots together. If your mind is struggling to solve a problem, but we know the truth that my mind is filled with divine ideas because the mind of God and my mind are shared. There's only one mind here. If that's the case, then I understand that I can access whatever information I need whenever I need it. And we talk about the law of attraction here regularly, that reminds us that whatever energy or belief system we're holding on to continues to reproduce for us. So if we know we have the power to use that law in a way that we prefer, then we actually have a way out of any problem. We just shift gears a little bit. So this is what I learned from the scam that was happening in my life. Was $1,000 seemed to leave my purview, and I even said to you last week, that wasn't my problem. Do you remember what I said? Do you remember that I said the first thought around that was, God is my source? So that song has obviously helped me. Singing it here regularly, knowing that the infinite substance of God is present. I knew that whether it felt unfortunate, the truth was there's always more, and I have access to it. But what I struggled with was, how did I make such a stupid decision? How did I get taken in? And this is where I wanted understanding. Why? Why did this happen? And I spent some time sitting and knowing that God is my source, but trying to understand my part in this. And what I realized was, I had been studying and open to new ideas that were so foreign to me that I was finding myself wanting it to be true, but afraid that it wasn't. And the word that comes to mind about the energy that I had been living in for months was distrust. And here I find myself in the middle of a scam where I could not trust those that I wanted to trust. And here's what happened to me. And then there's the loss of money. So the knowing that God is my source wound up producing the money back in the account. Yes. Yes. Yay. And it took me a while to get to the point where I'd been living an energy that the law had to demonstrate for me in my life, because it was what I was being and it was what I was creating. So as much as I don't want to own that, at least it's wisdom and understanding about how I want to move forward. And as I thought about how I want to move forward, what came to me was, I know that these principles, basically, that I teach you every week after week here in Unity, are true. And I have no doubts about them. So I'm just going to go back to knowing those as truth for me, and let them always be my source of good and my guide. And just keep following in that direction. So when you're seeking wisdom and understanding, here's what I think you're going to come to. And you're going to feel compassion. Do you have this on the screen? Let's show this. Where you feel compassion, wisdom and understanding is going to bring you a state of peace. And that's one of the things I felt was relaxed when I come to that understanding. It also has the ability to remove fear when we're living from wisdom and understanding. It's also that we make healthy and holy decisions. That when we're living from wisdom and understanding, we're deciding for the highest good of everyone involved instead of just the selfish ego. And it also will help us see what the next right step is for us. So it's a valuable package when you combine these two together. And I encourage you to take that process and train yourself to pause. When you are in a decision-making mode, whether it's an excited one or a terrified one, pause. Ask. Listen. All from an energy of gratitude, love, appreciation, so that you can be as close to the mind of God, the thoughts of God, as you can be. And wisdom and understanding will just roll in for you. Trust that, okay? Let's take some time in the quiet, which is home base for wisdom and understanding. What we like to do is release distraction first. So that means just scanning your body to see if there's any tension. And breathe as if you're breathing a loving light into that area of your body. We're surrounded by light. We're surrounded by love. Just see yourself breathing that into any area of the body that feels distracting. Feel it soothing you. Calming you. Comforting you. Breathe deeply now from the belly, way down deep. Just breathe deeply in for 4 seconds, hold for 2, out for 6 counts. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 2, out for 6. Move back into your natural breathing rhythm. Maybe just a little bit more deeply. Allow your shoulders to relax, your hands to open, your feet to settle into Mother Earth. Feel the entire planet supporting you. I know that Spirit knows what is meant for me to know. I know that Spirit knows what is meant for me to know. In this quiet time, where my thoughts are centered on the presence within, I simply ask that divine mind, what is important for me to know right now? And now we'll take it a little more deeply. And first turn our thoughts towards someone that we care about, someone that we love, something that we're grateful for. Feel that appreciation till your heart warms up. Just keep coming back to that person or that animal, that place in nature until your heart warms up. Feel that love. Center in on the presence of the divine within you and ask, what would be good for me to know now about myself? What would be good for me to know about myself? And listen. Breathe deeply from the place of gratitude. Releasing anything unlike the truth of God. And in this moment, this eternal, infinite moment, I'm grateful to know that God and I are one. That God's good is my good. That God's love is for me. And with these truths, these nuggets of wisdom, I understand there's nothing to fear. I understand that I may be generous in my loving and my giving. I understand that all things good are possible. This is the truth of my being, and so now I let it be, and so it is. Amen.